This is Minecraft's deadliest trap. What starts off as a simple parkour is not what it seems. But before we get to this, we have to rewind back to when Mumbo Jumbo uploaded a video on his take of the most dangerous room in Minecraft. But I noticed some flaws, so I rebuilt it, with basically everything he included without the button. And in case you missed the video, here's a quick rundown. If you move even one step, the floor opens up and you die. If you open the wrong barrels, arrows and fire charges get shot at you and you die. If you put out or break any block, then lava comes pouring from the roof and you have nowhere to go. And I also slapped some wardens around the outside because why not? Now don't get me wrong, these traps are obviously very effective and they do work. However, the problem is after seeing them once, you can find ways around it, like simply breaking a block and placing it before the lava falls down. Then you've basically passed every single trap, except for the wardens. Oh, and also you can just right click the bed, and if the lava is flowing down while the floor is moving, you'll just respawn outside of the room. However, this can easily be patched. But nonetheless, I still wanted to test the room, so I invited some of my friends on to see whether or not they could escape. And while the traps did work like I had suspected, everyone was able to escape one way or another. Therefore, this gives us three main things we have to avoid: breaking blocks, spawn points, and spawn protection. Because of these parameters, it would be pretty hard to build an intricate room with all these in mind. So I had to see a more simpler design, something that just got the job done without looking too fancy or needing too many components to work. And with that in mind, I had to tackle the first problem, which was breaking blocks. The idea that I had for this would just simply make breaking blocks take so long it would just be out of the picture. And not only would it take so long, it would take so long that you wouldn't even be able to break the block before dying. Now there are multiple ways that I could pull this off. However, the simplest one that I thought of was just lava and obsidian with Elder Guardians, so that you could get the mining fatigue. And this seemed to work pretty well. You can't really find ways around it. Even if you try to disconnect and reconnect, the breaking cycle would just reset. So I think this one would work for now. Oh, and fun fact, if you actually wanted to break 2 blocks of obsidian using your fist with mining fatigue 3, well, that would take over 2.5 hours to do. So yeah. The next problem that I had to tackle was spawn points. Now, this one can be pretty difficult because, well, if you block up the bed, then they respawn in a random location. And if you don't have a bed, they also respawn in a random location. So then the only really option I had was to use this spawn point to my advantage. Therefore, with this knowledge, I was able to create a trap where the moment you were spawned in, that spawn point would actually be the location of the trap. If you didn't know, Minecraft has weird spawn point mechanics where if every other block is occupied, then you'll spawn at the lower left corner of the bed. This means that you can build the trap around the bed so that when the player dies and respawns, they're automatically in the trap with no items to their advantage. Unless you're using keep inventory, but who would be using that? And finally, the last challenge is spawn protection. Now, unfortunately, you can't actually find a way around spawn protection. Or can you? No, you cannot. The only way you can actually change it is if you modify the world files. Therefore, this means that if you're playing on a server, you'll probably just have to incorporate it somehow. Which is why I've opted with the lava from the start, because even if spawn protection runs out, you'll still keep burning. This combined with the mining fatigue makes sure that there is no way of escaping, especially with nothing. Now, all of these things combined can make a pretty good trap that will get the job done for the majority of the time. However, there is an option that I've left out, and probably for a good reason. And that's the chunk ban. Now, if you don't already know what this is, it's essentially a way of storing so much information that a server simply cannot handle it. Therefore, if any player walks in any radius of where you're storing those items, they get kicked. And when they rejoin, they get kicked again, and so the cycle repeats, essentially banning them from the server. Now with that out of the way, we can move on to the actual design, which is this big obsidian blob. And among this big mess is actually a parkour and a tube. But more on the tube later. The first part is this simple parkour that looks really innocent, and surely it means no harm, right? Yeah. Well, at the end of it seems like this promising chest with wonderful rewards. However, upon trying to complete it, you can't actually reach the chest because of the way it's positioned and the use of black concrete. It looks like you can, but you actually cannot. There is only a 1 block tall gap, and there's nothing in the chest anyways. And then after dying from the parkour or dying in any way, you'll find that you respawn inside what I like to call the tube. But in the original design for said tube, I actually included some dripstone at the bottom, supposedly to finish the job quicker. Well, yeah, it can finish the job quicker. It can also allow the player to escape simply by using spawn protection. Because if the player drops down, breaks a couple dripstones, and places them strategically, then they've essentially built them a pocket of air which they can just start mining. So, without any dripstone, we just have a very simple and basic trap, but it works really well. Not only is there lava, there's also a repeating dispenser that shoots arrows at you, arrows of harming. This means that, well, if you don't move, you're going to eventually die, and if you jump down, well, you're also gonna die, so.
Okay, but what if you have like your friend like break you out or rescue you out?
Now with this dispenser system also comes a flaw, because you can't have infinite arrows for shooting, well, out of a dispenser that is, but you can load up a lot of double chests and just refill them once in a while. This means that you would still have to restock this, because if you don't, well, then the player could just simply spawn back and just break the blocks, which would not be good. But what if you wanted to add just like a cherry on the top to this experience? Well, since you have all that obsidian lying around, you might as well build some nether portals. Make it a little more noisy, just to add to the experience. But at the end of the day, you can always turn the sound off. Now, if you're still watching this, you might be thinking to yourself, well, kind of boring. You just use the most simple stuff, and well, that's kind of how it has to be, because if you think about it, the more variables and stuff you add is just more likely for something to go wrong, such as all the complicated mechanisms at the start of the video with all the sculk sensors redstone. But I guess at the end of the day, sometimes less is more. And well, that's pretty much it. A very simple yet deadly base. But now that I've achieved building that, I wonder what else can I achieve in 1 second?